Long ago, there was a boy that heard of noodles like no other. They were said to be created by this god named Ra and intended for men to eat. Therefore, the boy named it ramen noodles. He began his journey heading north and seeking these noodles upon the mountains of China, because that is where the old tale passed down from generations claimed it to be. As he was seeking, he viewed large masses of people just north of him. These people were hostile, wanting to pursue the ramen, the young boy thought. With this thought piercing through his mind, he decided to start building his way up to where he believed the ramen was. He built this large pathway, 20 feet above the ground, for miles on end. As he neared the so-thought location, the invaders climbed the path and pursued him.
Come here, scum!
The young boy eventually escaped the invaders, then saw a glow as if it were from heaven. While standing on his pathway, it perfectly connected to this divine glow. He was filled with so much joy, words could not express it. He finally found the ramen after days, jumped in the tub, and basked in it. He thought, where are the invaders though? They could come any second. He looked back and saw the herd. They actually were not invaders. After close examination, they were a group wanting to go to the beach of China, and his ambitions of the Great Wall of China blocked them from their own desires.
During an enchanting summer holiday to Europe, we found ourselves on the coast of Belgium. My friend and I were told to walk to De Haan, a neighbouring town. They said it was an easy and scenic walk, no worries. So we did. We were taking it easy along the beach when closures made us take a detour. We happened upon a trail that we think will cut us some time. As we near the entrance, big signs are stuffed into our faces. No walkers, keep out. How bad could it be? We asked each other. We didn't have any other option, so we went. Insects hummed a steady tune as little mice were seen scampering in the bushes. The creaking of heavy branches, gentle rustling of the leaves, and the ground crunching with each step forward was abundant. The forest was very much alive. About a third into the trail, we hear a sickening shriek. The forest falls silent. It knew not to make another move. We freeze and look at each other in horror. My heart is racing. Here we are in a foreign country about to be charged by God knows what. Bushes move to our left, then to our right. Heavy footsteps grow closer, heavy exhales louder as it navigates the floor in front. I close my eyes, hold my breath as I wait for my end. The monster swallows air as it prepares for another shriek. I squint my eyes open, and to my surprise, there's a wholesome little donkey standing in front of me.
Long ago, when the skies were young, there was a falcon named Freddie who could outfly the wind itself. He was mighty, proud, and searching for a place to call home. His journey began at the mighty Grand Canyon. Freddie swooped down between the red cliffs, his wings brushing the canyon walls. The people below marveled as his shadow stretched from rim to rim. But Freddie shook his head. Too hot, he said. There's no heart in this empty desert. So he turned east, flapping until he reached the shining towers of New York City. He dove between skyscrapers taller than mountains, leading him faster than taxis below. Crowds craned their necks to glimpse his soaring figure. Freddie landed on Lady Liberty's torch and gazed at the endless city. Too loud, he muttered. No sky left for me here. At last, Freddie's wings carried him for the rolling green hills of West Virginia. He glided along the river until he came upon Fairmount. The sky was wide, the hills welcoming, and the people lifted their hands to cheer. Just right, Freddie whispered. Here, Freddie built more than a nest. He built a future. They say he founded Fairmont State University itself, a place where learning soars as high as his wings. And to this day, when a shadow races across the campus lawn, Students know it's Freddy the Falcon, still guarding the home he made his own.
The students ended the conveyor belt like always, but something seems off about today. Well, the students knew the professor was quite tall, but something seems off. They just can't put their finger on it. At first, they just ignored the feeling and continued with the lesson at hand, but when they left that day, they still felt off. When they all had class again, the feeling came back, and they thought the professor was a bit taller than the last time they had them, but they thought it was just their imagination. Over the next several classes, the feeling got worse, and the professor's height became quite hard to miss. So 2 of the students started to follow the professor, and one by one the students slowly disappeared. Then the students came up with a plan to track them without losing any more of them. So the students came up with a plan to download a tracker onto the professor's phone. So they tracked the professor into the woods, and what they saw was something that no one had ever seen before, and they were lost for words. They froze in place. What they were looking at was a creature that sounds like the professor they knew, but it looked like a mix of a dog and a quite tall human with long claws and sharp teeth. The beast looked at them, small group of students. Well, at least one can warn the next group of students.
The year is 1933. An old fisherman set out for the sea at the brink of dawn. The morning that day was still and quiet. The fish even quieter. Desperate to find hungry fish, he let his boat get slowly pushed by the current. The current slowly got stronger as the land vanished behind him. Faintly, something appeared on the horizon. It was an object held up by tall stilts. The current grew stronger, pushing his boat closer and closer to it like a magnet. It was an abandoned house. The abandoned house towered high over his boat like a mighty god. The stilts creaked in pain, tired of trying to keep the house from falling. The fisherman feared that if he were to touch it, the stilts would shatter, letting the building collapse into the ocean, to be forgotten forever. He watched the building slowly sway to the soft waves, like a flower swaying in an open field. The fisherman fell for its haunting beauty, trapped in it like a spell, as if the building emitted beauty like radiation, affecting anyone who got too close to it. He was never the same since that day. He tried to search for it again, every day and every night, but it never appeared on the horizon line again. Still, he goes out again and again and again, ignoring all the abundance of fish and all of his fishing poles, and hopes to see it forever poisoned by its radioactive beauty.
Well, Jerry was a born and bred West Virginian hunter, and ever since he was a young boy, he'd never missed a season. This year, he'd saved up for a brand new, high-dollar bow, and bow season had just opened. Jerry was determined he'd kick it off with a massive buck. Before sunrise, he slipped into the Appalachian forest and went straight to his favorite spot where just a few years back, he bagged his biggest deer to date. The day was coming to an end. As the sun began to fade, he sighed and thought about packing everything up. The woods grew still, and it was about that time. A monster buck, at least a 10-pointer, stepped right into range, just like fate delivered it itself. Jerry knocked an arrow and drew back and inhaled a deep breath. Before he could release his arrow, the treetops shook. From out of seemingly nowhere, a 12-foot Sasquatch with dark fur and bright yellow eyes appeared. In a blur faster than he could release the arrow, it scooped up Jerry's buck right by the neck and vanished, crashing through the forest so quickly Jerry didn't even have a moment to process what had just happened. The next morning at the local diner, Jerry told the tale, swearing up and down this Sasquatch swooped in, stole his trophy deer. His buddies just slapped their knees and cackled with laughter, but Jerry knew what he saw.
Well, howdy there. I'm about to tell you a story that you wouldn't believe unless you were there, and I was. The year was 1888 when an old cowboy rolled into the town of Winslow, Arizona. He walked into the dusty old saloon and walked up to the bar. The bartender asked him, "What'll it be, son?" The old cowboy said, "I reckon I'll have a shot of whiskey." Bartender asked him what he was in town for. The cowboy said, "I plan on taming El Diablo." The whole saloon fell silent. The bartender looked at him with concern in his eyes. The bartender then proceeded to tell the old cowboy that everyone that had tried to tame that bull was dead. And the cowboy just smirked and said, "I've tamed all kinds of creatures that most men weren't able to." Cowboy drank his whiskey and left. The saloon followed. The cowboy found the bull and climbed on. The bull immediately went berserk. He started bucking and swinging. It got to the 8-second mark, and the bull gave out one last buck. The cowboy flew 10,000 feet into the air up above the clouds. The crowd gasped. The cowboy barreled back down towards the earth and slammed directly into it. The impact was so strong it made a crater 170 miles deep. The cowboy did what he said. He tamed the bull, but at what cost? For he'd never be able to tame another animal again.
Let me tell you about something that happened in college. One day, class was starting, a class just like you all are in, a graphic design multimedia course. Everyone took their seats, but an airheaded girl made what seemed to be a harmless mistake. She sat in the wrong chair. Despite the confusion of everyone having to move their chairs around, eventually they are all seated, ready for class to start. Professor Tadlock starts the lecture, everyone listening intently until they all hear this weird creaking noise and feel themselves being pulled toward one side of the room. The professor tries to continue the lesson until computers are falling off the desks and people are falling out of their seats. Nobody understands what's going on. What they all failed to realize was that the chairs were arranged in a specific order for a reason. You see, this building was very old, and it was leaning to one side. The chairs were placed in a specific way to balance this out. When the girl moved her chair, the balance was tipped. Unfortunately, none of them were able to correct this mistake in time, despite all running to the corner of the classroom to try and prevent it. They screamed for help, but that didn't stop the building from tumbling down. Miraculously, they all survived and graduated with a graphic design degree 4 years later.
was the day after Christmas, and I had just gotten home from the longest day at work. As I got out of my car, my phone began to ring. It was my dad telling me to come over to the neighbor's pasture to help him dig a ditch for our drainage pipe. So I arrived, shovel in hand, and ready to work. After an eternity, we finally dug a long enough ditch for the pipe, so I jumped out of the 3-foot trench, and just as I did, I was met with a charging horse. All I heard were the thuds of its hooves getting faster and louder. When I looked up to see what was happening, all I could see was the horse headed straight for me, with eyes of pure hate, smoke coming from its nose, and ears as flat as a sheet of paper. It was too late. I had no time left to react. The horse reared up in front of me. Pain immediately spread throughout my entire face. He kicked me. I tried calling for help, but nothing was coming out. My jaws and my face were broken in millions of tiny fragments. I couldn't speak. All I could do was run. My dad saw me running across the pasture, hand over my face. He rushed over, asking me what happened, but still nothing would come out. He told me that I was fine and that everything was going to be okay, but I couldn't believe him. My 2 front teeth were hanging out of my head, blood pouring out of my mouth. So we called dentist after dentist, trying to get an appointment that night, but only one had answered. He told us that he could not see me until the morning and that I was just supposed to go to sleep like that. I never thought I would return to the child version of myself, wishing for my 2 front teeth for Christmas again, but that became my new reality.
It was 9:30. Sunday was getting ready to sleep in for the night, but before she climbed into her bed, she called for her cat. "She is sick," she said, but he did not come. Sunday walked all over her house, calling for him. "She is sick," she would say over and over again, but the feline never answered. When she got to the back door, Sunday realized it was open slightly. Without even thinking, she ran outside trying to find her cat. "She's sick," she yelled throughout the neighborhood. Sunday was about to lose hope, but then she heard a strange noise coming from an abandoned church right outside of town. She decided to look closer, but before she could look inside, a ball of fire came flying out the window. Sunday ducked barely out of the way of the attack. She got back up and quickly looked into the broken window. Sunday could not believe her eyes on seeing hundreds of cats wearing wizard hats and cloaks. The cats stood in a circle in the middle. In the middle, there were 2 cats going in and out, one of them being her beloved Cheesestick. Sunday watched in awe as the cats threw fireballs, summoned lightning, and moved the earth with just a wave of their wands. Before she could even comprehend what was happening right in front of her, the winner was being announced. However, before learning who won, a beam inside the church broke off, causing the cats to scatter. Sunday ran back home, still trying to figure out what just happened. Didn't have time to think, though, for long. As Cheesestick returned home, he was acting as if nothing ever happened and back to being a regular old cat. He called. Sunday looked down, too tired to even care anymore. She picked him up and walked into her bedroom. They both fell asleep as if nothing had ever happened. The end.
Jim had always been someone for hiking. He's gone up his fair share of mountains and trails. The part that had really stung lately was that he hadn't found any place to go where he hadn't been already. He's been frozen in his fair share of tundras, melted in his own collection of summer trails, and seen enough heights to wonder if he hadn't already been to space yet. On his weekly hike, he went on a trail that was in a dense temperate forest. He had been progressing like normal until a stick caught his eye. He'd seen sticks of several shapes and sizes, so something abnormal wasn't new to him. But this one seemed to go further than he could see. Or if this was finally something new. He went further and found himself running. Not out of fear, but surprise? Blades of grass taller than trees surrounded him. He went to take photos, but could only get blurs. Jim couldn't make heads or tails of this. He could swear he wasn't moving. The more he thought about it, panic began to set in. Was he moving, or was he still? He couldn't know for sure. There was a set of doors between 2 flowers. Without thinking, He set his hand on the door and began to push. When he pushed open the door, a set of lights poured in. As he walked forward, he felt someone touch his shoulder. Sir, the art exhibit closed years ago. How did you get in here? Art exhibit? It would explain why he had been through something so extraordinary. He still had no idea how he got there. Maybe some parts weren't closed off properly. There wasn't a way to know for sure. But when he got back home, he had a new perspective. Maybe just details and things he'd already seen.
Maybe there was more to see.
Juno yawned as she awoke, resting upon a windowsill in her owner's room. She stretches, hopping down with a questioning meter. She headed to the living room, then the bathroom, and even the kitchen. Her owner was nowhere to be found, and all that had been left for her was plain kibble. But today she decided she wouldn't tolerate plain old kibble. So Juno hopped back up on the windowsill, her paws straining with all her might. Suddenly, she felt the cool breeze flow through her fur, and she excitedly jumped into the grass, prancing down the street. Suddenly, something whizzed past her. She jumped, darting to the other side of the street as she heard loud noises all around her. She ran and ran before making it to a calmer place. Human children laughed and played, and her gait slowed. And then she smelled it, in the middle of the children, a pond. Inside, food. A huge fish, probably twice Juno's size. She leaped into the pond without hesitation, her claws digging into tough scales, teeth gnawing against its gills. She scurried out of the water instantly. Cats were notorious for disliking water, and Juno was no different. She ran home as fast as her little body could take her, jumping back through the open window before settling on the rug with her prize. She ate and ate, gorging on her reward, all the way down to the bone. Once she was satisfied, she jumped into the couch, curling into a mass of fluff as she shut her eyes, exhausted from her adventure.
It was a simple morning. I had just gotten up and made it to my computer, trying to figure out where the first of my many college classes would be held. However, I had entered the wrong video call and thought to myself, oh well, I'll just apologize for next time. But it wasn't that simple. My camera turned on its own, and an older, saggier face of mine looked directly at me, but its eyes were wide open. It repeated the word guilt over and over again. My mind spun in my head like a tornado among the sandy desert, blowing debris left and right. My bones turned into buzzing insects that made my arms shake, my feet weighing over 1,000 pounds, unable to move. However, in that final second, a voice rang out. It was my mother, shouting my name and shaking my shoulder. I had merely spaced out. Everything was fine. Well, at least I didn't throw up, right? Little did I know that was one of many, many experiences that I would undergo in my life of college. That was one of many anxiety attacks that I would go through. I can only hope for the best and pray that the worst never comes.
Our story begins in a city across the sea, full of beauty and mystery. A girl walking through its streets stumbles upon a little shop, to which she decides to enter. As the girl looks around, she comes across an old fountain pen with a golden tip. As she reaches for the pen, the shopkeeper emerges from the shadows, startling the girl. "May I help you, dear?" the shopkeeper asked. I'd like to buy this pen, please, the girl replied. I see. Let me ring you up. But remember to be careful. Spilled ink is tough to get out, the shopkeeper warned. With her new pen in hand, the girl resumed her walk and came across a grand cathedral. She sat down to begin drawing, but as she did, the page seemed to come alive. Thinking her eyes were playing tricks on her, she flipped to a fresh page and began to draw again. When the same thing happened, it must be this paper, she thought. Getting out her other sketchbook, she started her drawing for the third time, and once more, the image seemed to emerge from the page, like a pop-up book. The girl then realized that this was no ordinary pen, but rather a magical one, making anything you draw become 3D on the page. With this pen in hand, she realized that she could now make more detailed drawings than before, and better understand the subject of her art.
It was a chilly morning, and I had just let my dog, Gabe, out into the backyard to play fetch. I threw his favorite ball far into the yard, but as he ran through the tall grass, I saw him trip and fall with a faint thud. I ran into my backyard, only to find a small hole in the ground. I held my head close to the hole, and I could hear the faint barking of my dog. I immediately dropped into the hole, landing with a thud. I pulled out my phone's flashlight, and to my surprise, what had appeared to be a small sinkhole had expanded into a large cavern. I began to explore the cavern, trying to follow the sounds of my dog's whimpers and barks. As I was led down the path, I began to notice how unstable the cave was, as some of the ceiling began to crumble. I started to run through the cave as the barks got louder and louder, and there he was. I quickly scooped him up in my arms and began my sprint back to the entrance. As I ran past the muddy walls, I could hear large chunks of soil and rock begin to crumble and fall behind me. I continue running, not looking back. Up ahead, I see the light from the sunrise, and I can hear the faint chirping of birds. Right as we were about to be engulfed by the collapsing cave, I jumped out of the hole, saving my dog from the sinkhole.
Derek loved training on the soccer field. It was the place where he felt safe and happy. Every afternoon, he ran after the ball, dreaming of being stronger and faster. One day, as Derek tied his shoes, dark clouds came. A storm was near. Most people would stay home, but Derek wanted to train. He wanted to show that nothing could stop him. When he stepped on the field, the wind and the rain hit hard. The storm felt alive, like a strong rival. Derek was in a new and hard situation. At first, the storm was too much. The ball moved in the water and the wind pushed it against him. But Derek learned to play with it. He leaned onto the wind and heard the thunders like music and used the rain to give him power. For a moment, Derek felt like nothing could stop him. He proved to himself that he was strong. But it was not easy. His body hurt, his clothes were wet, and the rain made him hard to see. When the storm ended, Derek was back on the quiet field. The field was the same, but Derek was different. He learned that storms, like problems in life, are not here to break us. They are here to make us stronger.
We thought it would be a fun trip. Just two friends, a weekend in Pittsburgh, and an Airbnb that looked decent enough in the pictures. But the moment we arrived, we knew we had made a mistake. The front door wouldn't open. No keypad, no lockbox, no host answering our messages. Just us, holding all our things and sweating on a porch far from home. After what felt like centuries, the host finally texts, "Check the mailbox." Hesitantly, we do. Inside is a zigzag rolling paper package, and in it, a key, wrapped in a napkin. Inside the house, 100 stairs, no air, no fan, A TV, unplugged, nowhere near an outlet, just sitting in the middle of the room. The walls, mustard yellow, peeling, as if the house was trying to shed its own skin. And the blanket, one single blanket provided to us. A heavy, fluffy, matted pelt, as if an animal had been skinned to create the monstrosity. We called it the wolf. We did not choose the wolf. The wolf chose us. We didn't sleep that night. We just lay there with 10 hours of fan sounds playing on my phone. Listening, sweating, wondering if the house was listening too. We left the house behind, or tried to. That was our last Airbnb. From that day forward, we would only stay in hotels with locks, with air conditioning, and without wolves.
Me, my two sisters, and my parents made our way to Miami and hopped on our cruise ship, finally off to the Caribbean islands. What a dream. We were having the time of our lives on the ship. I didn't know there was so much to do. People warned me beforehand about seasickness, but we were all feeling sicker by the day as the ship started rocking more and more. It was our second day at sea and I got a funny feeling in my stomach. Right then, I heard the announcement saying the daily activities are canceled due to the weather. I wonder how often this happens on a cruise ship. The staff walking the halls, ensuring everyone found their ways to their rooms, looked concerned. The beds in our rooms began to shake more and more. Then, the thunder and the lightning began. We heard the announcements to get our life jackets on immediately. We grabbed the life jackets and watched as the wave crashed over our windows in our room, and we were on the 6th floor. The waves had to be 80 feet high. Another announcement. There's marine life on top of the boat due to the high waves. Are we ever going to get back to land? Another announcement, then another announcement. Will we even get off this boat?
So once upon a time, there was this grumpy old dude, always scowling, always huffing, always shaking his fist at the youth these days. But he had a reason. He lived in a tiny countryside town where gossip was the local sport. Everyone knew everything about everyone. For example, his hairy toes he showed off once in the 4th grade were still a hot topic. His mother's rat tail collection was public knowledge. As he passed, they would giggle and count how many hairs were left on his clearly balding head. But what he hated most was that they wouldn't dare to say it to his face. One day he had enough. He left town for good and moved to the big city. But the city was chaos. People slammed into him left and right. A gang of skateboarding teens flew past. One stopped to point and say, "Dude, that fit is trash. Nice toes though, radical." Then skated off. The old man was baffled. And it was then that he felt a tiny tickle on his ankles. He looks down and what he sees are giant city rats nibbling at the hems of his pants. Now, most people might have called it quits on the city life, but instead the old man knelt down and gently kissed their tiny rat heads. His grumpy frown turned into the biggest smile anyone had ever seen. Turns out the old man was made for the city. There were no more whispers, only loud shouting from like-minded folks. The city didn't know or care about his past. Somebody liked his toes. And the best part of it all, rats were his favorite animal. The old man had never felt more free.
The rain hammered down on the empty streets, where an unlucky student was walking home late. Her bus was a block away, but her impatience swayed her into taking a shortcut through an alley, something she would later regret. She couldn't see a thing, which placed her at high alert. She knew the shortcut was stupid, but she didn't turn back. After a few minutes, her anxiety eased, and she was almost through. But Then came the screams, echoing all throughout the alley, and then sudden silence. She couldn't help but turn behind her to see a gigantic looming figure, cloaked in black, holding a metal bat, and face covered with a doll mask. There was only darkness seen behind their eyes, no sign of any human features. Her blood froze and she ran a mile a minute, but the figure caught up to her in a flash, and before taking a fatal swing said, "Sorry, but I can't have witnesses."
I heard the door slam open, cracking like it was coming off its hinges. I whirled to face the noise, where my eyes fell upon him. Xavier stood in the doorway, chest heaving, rainwater dripping off of him, and his eyes burning with rage. He stepped into the wooden cabin, making me flinch with fear. I stepped back. "Listen, I didn't mean to..." Grabbing a Nerf gun, he barreled towards me. I dodged him. Rolling behind the couch and grabbing my own Nerf blaster, I searched for ammo in the cushions, only to feel plastic hit my shoulder. As I turned, I was kicked and slung to the wall. Xavier stood, holding his blaster like an axe. He walked toward me as I tried to regain myself. I winced in pain as I shouted, "I don't want to fight you. I never meant to leave you out there, I promise." He stopped. "I'm so sorry that you were out there for so long, but this isn't the answer. I'm sorry." He dropped his blaster. Tears flooded his eyes. "I never knew." I saw regret creep across his face. "I believe you left me." He collapsed to the floor. I finally regained my strength, moving toward him. I consumed him in a hug, the pain leaving his body with every sob. He sat there on the floor, wrapping in a hug, reassuring the other that we were friends, and would be, forever.